And welcome. All right, it is time to start. And thank you all for attending. And welcome to today's webinar on how to develop career readiness like leading corporations. My name is Bob McDonald, and I am Capsum's Director of Global Engagement. I'm joined today by Matt Shell, Capsum's Senior Business Development Manager, to share insights on how corporations are addressing the challenges of developing essential business skills within their employees. And we will also share today about how some business schools are also working to solve the challenges related to career readiness with students. But before we get started, I wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping reminders. First, if you have questions or comments, and we hope you do, please use the Zoom Q&A feature to enter those questions. We'll have time at the end of this webinar to answer your questions. And if we don't get to those questions, we'd be happy to follow up shortly after with answers. Also, this is a recorded webinar, so we will be making that recording available shortly after the webinar as well. So you can share it with colleagues, review it later if you would like to. So great. Well, again, welcome today. And I was thinking about the origins of this webinar. And Capsum, as many of you may know, has a long-standing position of helping both businesses and business schools and corporations develop business acumen and soft skills using simulations and simulation-based assessments. And we get to see up close this continuum of career readiness and skill development from business schools, which are introducing core concepts, the foundational knowledge that students need to be effective in their business careers, their professional careers, and also continuing through to the corporations that are looking to upskill workers to ensure that their workforce is highly efficient, able to execute on the mission of these corporations. So we get to see this full continuum over time. And it's really exciting to work with everybody in helping develop wherever people are in their professional careers to develop their business skills. But why this webinar now? And because we've been doing this for quite a long time. Well, in the past 3 years, we've seen a growing sense of urgency, particularly in corporations, to improve the skills of their employees and to be able to measure the impact of their training efforts. So not only do they need skills, but they need to make sure that what they're executing is actually effective. And so last fall, Matt and I, we attended a conference with leading learning and development executives from major corporations. And what we learned in over 30 meetings, Matt, in like 3 days, with these VPs and directors of skill development. It was a busy few days. That seems every corporation, every industry is facing challenges around skill development, skill assessment, and skill development. And so, I think we talked to, just to give you an idea, we talked to airlines, recruiting firms, accounting firms, semiconductor manufacturers, the largest retailers in the world, insurance companies, financial institutions, you name it. Didn't really matter what the industry was. Corporations are hyper focused on making sure that they upskill their employees. And why are they so focused on that? And what are the topics they're focused on? Well, it's about with all the uncertainty and dynamics in the market right now, having a workforce that's highly skilled, agile, can work well together is crucial. And so we talked a lot with these executives about how do you, creating measurable programs, but measuring soft skills. Do we have the right mixed composition in terms of soft skills within our employees? How do we identify potential leaders? We have a great team of engineers. How do we know which ones can be our next management team? How do we get that? Succession planning. There's a lot of mobility in the marketplace. How do we ensure in the job marketplace? How do we ensure that if somebody leaves through retirement or some other career opportunities, that we have that knowledge to tell to the next team what's coming on and transfer that knowledge, as well as career pathways and retention. All of these are really critical issues that we're seeing on the corporate side as well. So that was last fall. Since last fall, we have seen nothing but continued demand for this. So we're getting lots of corporations. We're talking with lots of corporations who are having these challenges, not just in the U.S., but in Europe, Middle East, Africa, Asia. it's a global requirement. So we thought it'd be helpful today for us to share what we're seeing at that one end of the continuum with those who are at the other end of the continuum. Like, what's the target? What's the environment in which today's students who are developing their career-ready schools in either undergraduate or graduate programs? What's the target that they're looking at and going for? And so that was the origin for today's webinar. We wanted to kind of share this knowledge of what's going on in the corporate space at some sense of urgency with you all in business schools. So Matt, let's take a look at the agenda and specifically what we're going to look at today. Okay, so the first thing we'll be looking at today, Matt, who's worked with literally hundreds of companies in helping develop learning and development programs to assess skills across the globe. He's going to bring sharing some insights into the current landscape. What are we seeing in terms of trends, priorities, and challenges that corporations are facing, particularly regarding learning and development? What we're hearing time and time again is that effective learning development is not a nice to have. It's not, oh, we got soft skills. Soft skills are essential for companies achieving their goals, as well as the procedural knowledge as well. So Matt's going to take a look at that. Then he's going to review kind of the key ingredients, what we're seeing that's necessary for effective skill development. Not only are we going to upskill our employees, but are we getting the most for our buck? And are we able to get that component? So the last part is we'll look at in today's webinar is how corporations are upskilling, but also how some leading business schools are using these same tools that our corporations are using to upskill their workers and assess skill development in their own programs today, to give you an idea of how these two are coming together overall. So without further ado, Matt, do you want to take it away?
Absolutely, Bob. Happy to do so. And hello, everyone, of course. And thank you for joining us for today's session. We've got quite the interesting webinar for you all today. Quick recap. My name again is Matthew Schell. I'm Senior Business Development Manager here at Capsum, where I assist all of our corporate clients. And that's in the form of both group-based leadership development programs that we deliver on-site and virtually with some of our strategy simulations, but also with the development of custom simulations like which the ones we'll be discussing today. And as Bob mentioned, what I'm excited to do today is introduce you all to the concept of inbox simulations, which are these scalable, highly interactive, and completely customizable kind of day-on-the-job experiences. And we're going to demonstrate how effective those can be with those practical real-world success stories that Bob alluded to, both on the academic and the corporate front. But by the end of today's session, you're going to see firsthand how these immersive, kind of easy-to-use experiences have helped organizations large and small, all the way up to Fortune 50 companies like Microsoft we'll hit on today, that are using these interactive tools to bring the most out of their people, and how you can do the same with your students by developing these key career skills that are really necessary for them to differentiate themselves once they enter the workforce. And to kick things off, let's go ahead and take a look at the current business environment that companies are operating in and highlight some of those trends, priorities, and challenges that they are experiencing. Because in short, as Bob alluded to, the last 3 years, learning and development in corporate has been in quite the interesting scenario. Because at this point in time, we're learning from both new and existing clients alike about trends that are rapidly shifting the business environment. I'd just like to speak to 3 of those top concerns that we're hearing about here today to kick things off. But the first trend that I'd really like to highlight that we're seeing is this role that rapid leaps in technology are playing in the changing way that we work. And really, I could think of no better way to demonstrate this than by alluding to a topic that's made quite the impression recently. It's the ChatGPT AI platform that I'm sure you've all heard about at this point. You know, here's a solution capable of automating repetitive tasks and providing instant access to some fairly nuanced and informed information. And I could say personally that this tool has helped me increase my efficiency and productivity in a variety of ways. And I think it has a lot of potential for learning and development on the corporate side, but for business schools as well. I mean, think about how a technology such as this could allow for more personalized training and instruction, more individualized coaching, if you will. I mean, these are all things that we're actively looking at here now at Capsum. However, it's important to note that, you know, things like ChatGPT are tools, not a be-all, end-all solution, at least not for the moment. But that leads us to the next challenge that L&D is facing, and that these rapid changes in technology and the general change in the future of work are creating a brand new skills gap crisis. And this is because with any major technology-based disruption that we see, the roles and responsibilities of existing jobs are going to change dramatically. And then there's also going to be new roles created that are a result of those same rapid jumps in technology. But again, I see another opportunity here. Could a technology such as ChatGPT or the inbox simulations that we'll hit on today, could they be used by corporations to upskill their workforce quickly to stay competitive in this changing global environment? Or on the academic front, can we use these technologies to create continuous learning that's crafted, customized, and can be implemented quickly to keep students ahead of that curve before they even enter the workforce? Well, personally, I believe so. And in fact, I think it not only gives students a way to differentiate themselves, but offers them essentially a competitive advantage as they're trying to get out there and start their career. But with these first two trends, we're speaking to mostly newer challenges, last 5 years or so. And I think it's worth noting that there are still some existing challenges that we need to consider, with the third one being this huge demand by corporations for transferable soft skills in both new and existing employees. And we'll speak more to this soft skill component in just a bit. But to kind of kick things off from here, I'd like to expand a bit on that second trend around the skills gap crises by sharing with you all a statistic that was really eye-opening to me personally. And that is that nearly 50% of the global workforce is going to need to either be upskilled or reskilled before 2025, just 2 short years away. And as many of you I'm sure know, upskilling is simply helping individuals develop new competencies that are related to their current role, while reskilling focuses on training individuals to take on new roles in their organization. And while upskilling and reskilling employees has always been a challenge, it's really the degree to which we're seeing this now that's really unprecedented. And we particularly believe that business schools are very well positioned to help address this concern before their students ever take that first step into an office. And the way to really do that is to assess and develop these key career skills needed in this changing environment, but do so in a very practical and kind of risk-free way. But again, this is just one piece of the puzzle. We also need to consider the long-standing challenges that are seen in both academia and corporations, and that is the struggle to develop soft skills. And again, as I'm sure you all know, the soft skills generally have been a topic of discussion and challenge to both assess and develop for quite some time now. We're talking about the core interpersonal skills here, like the ability to effectively communicate, to problem solve, and to work within teams. We've seen this trend for decades now. You can go back and look at a Bloomberg job skills report a decade ago, or Training Magazine or ATD's own reports released just a few weeks ago. And they always indicate that the most common, the most sought after, yet least common skills that they're trying to attain in new employees are always soft skills. And just take a moment here to kind of link that to that disruption of technology component that I hit on. As an AI like, say, ChatGPT takes over more repetitive, more routine tasks, well, what's going to happen is the focus is going to shift to more complex and more nuanced roles that require more human interaction, more creativity, and more critical decision-making. So really, this only compounds the importance of having clear and concise communication and being able to effectively deliver that, being able to critically think, and then to, of course, work in teams as well. But what I would say is new, the kind of new factors of the soft skill debate, is that a lot of companies out there are starting to say that these matter just as much, if not are more important than technical knowledge. In fact, if you looked at LinkedIn's 2019 learning report, found that 92% of hiring and training professionals say soft skills matter more than hard skills. And by hard skills, of course, I mean industry, knowledge-based learning, company-specific information, for instance. But to take this a step further, it's found that 63% of organizations are willing to hire somebody that has those transferable soft skills and then train them up on the technical side of things, rather than putting the onus on the technical knowledge alone. And you probably say, okay, well, why is that? Well, based on my experience, I think it's safe to assume that many companies feel fairly confident in their ability to develop hard skills or technical or company-specific knowledge. It's what they do every day. But soft skills are a bit tricky. And the reason for that is because knowledge-based learning and skills-based learning are two entirely different things. Mainly because when it comes to soft skills, these are inherently behavioral, meaning that you have to actually apply them to see how proficient you are at them. And that brings us just to some of the challenges we're seeing on the corporate side, but they're certainly relevant for higher education as well. And it's not just a challenge to develop them, there's also a bit of perceptual component that we need to look at too. And more specifically, it comes down to our self-awareness of these skills, or students' self-awareness to be specific, and how we as humans, understandably have a tendency to overestimate our capabilities. When I see this on the corporate front, I would refer to this as the Dunning-Kruger effect, a cognitive bias where having a lack of knowledge or skills can lead individuals to overestimate themselves because they don't know what they don't know. See it in the corporate side, but we see it in academia too. And just to demonstrate that, you can take a look at this chart here from the National Association of Colleges and Employers. Here we have 5 of the top key soft skills listed, with the green percentiles indicating where students are rating their perceived proficiency on these skills, and then compared with the blue percentiles from employers on where they see college grads' soft skills at. And while some of these are close, like teamwork, for example, others have astounding gaps, particularly when it comes to, say, communication, critical thinking, and leadership-related competencies. So in summary here, we need to not only assess and develop these key skills, but realign our perceptions with reality for better self-awareness, something to keep in mind. But let's just go ahead and do a quick summary on some of the things we've hit on so far. We've examined the role of technology, looked at the growing need for upskilling and reskilling, and how soft skills are creating challenges for corporate L&D efforts. But let's take a moment to step back and examine these struggles from the learner, from the executive perspective as well. And just starting from the learner perspective, we could take a study from Gartner, for example, that found that 70% of employees say that they don't have the mastery of their skills needed to do their jobs. And you may say, well, why is that? Well, there appears to be a knowing-doing gap between the training itself and the application of that training, because only 12% of employees say that they're actively applying these new skills they're learning from L&D initiatives into their day-to-day jobs. So basically, we can sit here and recognize that this concern is shared equally with employees, but what about the perspective from the executive level? What does management think of this? Well, we've got a challenge there as well, because only 25% of executives currently believe that training efforts within their company provide a positive and, more importantly, measurable improvement to employee performance, which hints at not just a gap in how we apply our training, but also the ability to effectively measure its impact as well. So basically, our current methods are coming up a bit short, or more specifically, the tools that we're using are not aligned with the needs of this changing business environment, which these statistics would suggest. And that's exactly what companies have reached out to us about and what we've tried to address here at Capsum. And honestly, that's exactly what we've been doing. We work to create immersive experiences that address many of the challenges that we've been discussing and allow us to focus on developing learners in both higher education and the corporate sphere on the right skills in the right way. So it begs the question, how do we bridge this gap between knowledge and application? How do we close this skill gap, generally speaking? Well, what we'd like to do now is kind of share with you what we believe are kind of the core components that must be present in order to achieve meaningful skill development. And just to start things off, let's address a quick point around terminology by stating that the concept of career readiness in higher education and skill development when it comes to corporate trainings are very much one and the same, in that we need to develop these core career skills at the earliest opportunity so that a student or an employee can reach their maximum potential quicker, whether they're entering their first role in the workforce or they're halfway through ascending into their career. But what's also important to note is that in order to achieve either of these, we need to make sure that our efforts are application-based, not just knowledge-based. Because again, generally speaking, we're great at training on information, on knowledge-specific info, but we've got some work to do when it comes to applying that knowledge. So that's why we at CAPSIM have worked to determine what is the best way to go about this. And we've gathered what we believe are the three essential main ingredients needed for that meaningful development to take place. And just to quickly summarize these, and then we'll relate back to them and expand on these a bit later, let's start with the first ingredient, in that an effective skill development solution needs to be relevant. And what I mean by that is that it needs to make sure that you need to make sure that what you're learning about matters, and that what the students are learning have direct applications related to the role that they may eventually have someday. So to assess their skills, you need to present them and have them engage with scenarios that they're most certainly going to experience on the job. So they should be going through these real world scenarios that are based on true to life situations to make it as relevant as possible for them. But from there, we need to consider the second ingredient, and that any solution must also be authentic. And what I mean by that is it should be as experiential and as immersive as possible. Basically, what you want to do is you want to be able to provide students with a vehicle for assessing skills that mirrors a day in the life of the fictional career as much as possible. So that way it feels more realistic. Has more of a higher fidelity. That way they can more effectively learn by doing. And then the final ingredient, perhaps the most important, is that the solution needs to be measurable. Because frankly, you can't improve what you can't measure. I mean, to kind of conceptualize this, think about it in the way of like a road trip. How do you know how far that you've traveled if you don't know where you started? Therefore, we need to be able to assess these skills both empirically as well as longitudinally, so that way you're not only benchmarking where their skills are at a given moment, but you're tracking how they're developing over time. But now that we've kind of hit on these three ingredients, to kind of tie these together, I'd just like to take a moment to stress why I believe that simulations are really such a great vehicle to close these skill gaps and hitting on these 3 points. And really the best way that I have found to kind of conceptualize this is in the context of a sport. I mean, take golf, for example. If I want to improve someone's golf game, I could have them describe to me what they're doing and try to provide suggestions to them, but is that ultimately effective? Well, no, ultimately, because I'm only hearing it from their perspective. I'm not seeing them do it, right? If I wanted to truly assist someone with their golf game, I would take them to the closest course. I'd put them on the green. I'd observe them taking a couple shots. And from there, I would provide some insight into their strengths and weaknesses and try to offer guidance to help them improve. And whether it's business skills, people skills, sports skills, they're no different, whether we're talking about career readiness in universities or skill development in Fortune 50 companies. But the challenge is you need that environment. You need to be able to put students on the quote unquote, putting them on the green. That way they can test out these skills in action. And it's really here where I'd like to share with you the path forward and how you can achieve that same meaningful skills development at scale with these inbox simulations that we've designed to specifically address a lot of the challenges that we've been discussing thus far. But first things first, of course, what exactly is an inbox simulation? Well, the best way to describe it would be as a simulated experience where we're putting students in a day on the job scenario where they get to put their soft skills to the test by navigating the very situations that we know they're going to encounter in their careers. And going back to the golf example, think of this as essentially the green, where they have a chance to practice and see the impact of decisions without the typical risks associated with them. And really what's important to note here is that, as you can see, and as the name inbox simulation suggests, I mean, we're mirroring the email platforms that virtually all of us use every day. Makes it instantly relatable, and it's very familiar to anybody going through these. And by extension of that, it makes the experience very straightforward, very intuitive. At the same time, addressing one of the major challenges we've been discussing so far, in that they are actively applying their knowledge in a real world context that reflects the daily roles and tasks that they can expect to encounter. And what's important to note here too is that everything you're going to see today, virtually everything is customizable. And anything that you would like to design on this or create yourself is going to have the same science-backed approach that we've developed into our simulations over the last 4 decades. And how does the experience look exactly? Well, students jump into this simulated environment. They review and respond to a variety of emails, all delivered by fictional internal and external stakeholders. They can investigate by looking at supporting documentation in the company drive or looking at other communications. And then they get to make key decisions via nuanced multiple choice responses that have varying levels of effectiveness. They can do multi-answer responses, or my personal favorite, they can actually type out written responses. So that way you can get some insight into the nuance of their decision-making, say the justification behind why they're making a key decision. And what's nice about this too is, of course, the simulation component is as they're responding to these emails, they're seeing the consequences of their actions in real time, because what you choose matters. You're going to see specific replies based on how you respond. But what I'd say that makes this platform truly unique is that with inbox simulations, it's allowed us to kind of combine the validity of assessments that out there that have long been the best predictors of employee potential, of on-the-job performance, and combine that with the science-backed experiential learning approach that simulations are already known for. But this time around, adding a level of customization that to this point has pretty much been unattainable for many that want to create custom sims and implement them in their course. But basically, now that we know what Inbox is, let's go ahead and take a moment just to kind of relate it back to those three ingredients, and then we can go ahead and share some success stories as well. So let's start with that first ingredient. How are inbox simulations relevant? Well, really what I think makes inbox simulations so relevant is the degree of customization you have with them. Because basically you could put students in scenarios that directly align with the topics and skills that are already defined in your learning objectives. I mean, say for instance, you want them to experience what it's like to conduct a root cause analysis at a manufacturing company from an operation management perspective. Or maybe you want to see how they navigate different ethical conundrums from a human resources related role. You can do just that with Inbox, and really the potential is limitless here. And again, it's all done via this familiar simulated email format that they're already using at your institutions, and they're certainly going to use once they enter into their careers. But what about when it comes to authenticity? How does inbox simulations allow for these authentic experiences? Well, again, really, this is where the simulation component comes in, because we're presenting them with these wide variety of scenarios where they get to make the critical decisions, essentially be in the driver's seat to make these core decisions that can have major impacts on organizations, but again, without the risk associated with it. And the way we achieve this is by providing them with those nuanced multiple choice responses, really putting a note on the subtle changes in communication that can lead to large outcomes or large changes in an organization. And then having this branching logic behind them where they, again, see those consequences of their actions in real time. And these can be as linear or as straightforward or as multifaceted and complex as you would like. But most importantly is, how do inbox simulations deliver when it comes to measuring these key career skills? Well, this is really where our history with assessment comes in, because we've been a global leader in the assessment arena going back to about 2006. And what we did was we poured over half a century of research and examined some of the best career assessments out there, in particular in-basket exercises that are found in assessment centers. And we created a means to be able to measure these key soft skills that have been traditionally hard to measure, no pun intended. And the way that this is delivered is via both by individualized feedback reports that are available to the student right after they complete it, but also comparative percentile data. That way you as professors, as administrators, can review and analyze these skills and competencies right down to the individual level, up to the course level, and then finally all the way up to the institution level. And in terms of how you get this data, you can view it all within our platform. You can export the raw data, or we can integrate directly into your LMS to streamline it even further there. That way you can not only examine the strengths and improvement areas for a given student, but across curriculums and over the years as well. And I'm happy to say that we've been working with numerous universities and colleges to do just that. I mean, in just the last few years alone, we've developed dozens of these custom inbox simulation experiences with universities around the globe. And we've had topics that cover virtually every facet of the business curriculum, and we'll show those in just a moment here. But we've seen these inbox simulations used everywhere from as an immersive kind of live case study that's followed by a group discussion, to a required assessment in a course that's simply having the students applying the concepts that they're already learning in your course, but just again in this realistic simulation environment. And honestly, when I say the sky's the limit, I really truly mean that, because we work with institutions to create experiences on everything from strategic marketing to sports management, business analytics to business law, and even topics like cultural awareness to crisis management, just to name a few. And what's important to note is that this list just continues to grow and grow each year. And as more are developed, we're going to simply add them to this list. And we're happy to provide you with access to any of these if you want to see really what the potential of an inbox simulation can be. But now what we'd like to do is kind of shift gears and show you firsthand how both leading corporations and leading business schools are already benefiting from inbox simulations by just sharing a couple success stories for each. And to kick things off, the first success story I'd like to share on the point of relevancy from the corporate perspective is that of Armanino. And Armanino is a top 25 accounting and consulting services firm that's been experiencing phenomenal growth over the last 2 years. In fact, their headcount has increased 60% in those 2 years alone. But Armanino came to us with a challenge. They asked, how do we assess and develop these core supervisory skills in both our current managers, and how can we identify future leaders at Armanino at scale? Well, what they did is they acquired access to both our ready-to-use leadership development series of inbox simulations that are ready to be implemented immediately. And they also got access to our web-based no-code authoring platform that will also allow them to create their own role-specific trainings via inbox simulations as well. So think of this as a training set directly in a fictionalized version of Armanino, where they're encountering the very situations that are expected within that given role. And as a result, they now have a solution that can really grow with them as they continue to see this exponential growth, but at the same time, provide them with the key data that they need to assess and develop the next generation of supervisors at Armanino as well. And when it comes to relevancy, here's where I'd also like to bring in Bob to share a little bit about how Embry-Riddle is creating quite a unique experience with their inbox project. Bob?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Like Armanino, relevancy is very important to Embry-Riddle as well. Of course, Embry-Riddle is no stranger to using simulations. They use it all the time for training for high stakes with low risk environments in order to teach skills. So I guess in addition to, we talked about landing on the green, they have a more substantial focus of making sure everything goes right and using simulations to measure and train and to have relevant experiences for their students. So when Embry-Riddle wanted to build a simulation for career readiness within the aviation industry, which is a very broad and complicated industry, naturally they turned to Capsim to build an immersive simulation that allows students to experience what it's like to have a broader career in aviation. And the result, they built a Capsim inbox called Crisis Management in the Aviation Industry. Pretty relevant, right? And so students are placed in a role of a director of safety at a global airline, and they're assessed on their problem solving, communication, adaptability, customer service, relationship management skills, and all in a place where formative feedback can be provided and skills can be assessed, and students can find out where they're strong and areas that they may need to work on. So again, relevancy is crucial for Embry-Riddle, and they created quite a relevant and topical simulation to help address some major challenges within that their students, their graduates will face in the aviation industry. So Matt, what do you have next relating to authenticity?
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about that authenticity challenge by focusing on two more success stories here as well. And on the corporate front, what I'd like to hit on here is a story from S&P Global Market Intelligence. I'm sure many of you have heard of them, of course. They've created a fantastic data analytics platform that provides real-time financial intelligence data for their clients across all different sectors. It's used in academia, it's used in corporate, government, research purposes, you name it. You may have heard of this as well. It's called Capital IQ. And because Capital IQ is quite the robust platform, S&P wanted to ensure that their end users could efficiently navigate it and really get the most out of what the platform had to offer. So really certifying one's proficiency in this platform was a top priority for them. So they came to us and we partnered with them. We simply modified existing certification assessments they had, literally quizzes, and changed them into this immersive inbox experience. And what they have now is that their users can now go in as a participant in the role of a junior analyst. And they can actively navigate the Capital IQ platform. They can pull real-time information out of that platform and then apply it within that real-world context provided by the inbox simulation. And what we've done as a result of that has not only led to a much more engaging and immersive certification experience, but it's one that they can implement at scale and will grow with them as well. But now let's go ahead and take a look at Hofstra University, who's taking a similar approach with authentic inbox sims. Bob?
Yeah, absolutely. Hofstra's University Zarb School of Business has always been focused on career readiness. It's a focus for them and to make sure that their students are career ready. In fact, recently they just launched a core skills lab, which features CAPSIM to make sure the CAPSIM inbox to make sure the students have the career ready skills necessary upon either undergraduate graduation, or going back into the careers from a graduate perspective. So what Hofstra's uses CAPSIM's Leadership Development Series, which is a series of 4 inboxes that create authentic day in the life jobs. So their students can see what it's like to be a sales manager and see the questions that HR professionals receive, to look at ethical decisions that a manager has to make within their day-to-day experiences. And what's really interesting about the inbox is, depending on the answer, they might get a different answer. So it's not just a simple, oh, I answered that, I'm done with it. Well, answers have implications, and that helps students assess and be assessed on their competencies and various skills. So, that's a key element with Hofstra's with this core skills lab, is to make sure students have not just practice skills, but actually are able to reflect on them and create action plans to develop and address areas of improvement. So the other component too, with Hofstra is really excited about and using the CAPSIM inbox platform, is to get some data to measure the impact of career readiness efforts, and so that they'll be able to see programmatically from the students who come in and take these simulations and go through the inbox experience. They'll be able to get some interesting data on the skills profile of all their students who have gone through the program. And Matt, I think that's leads into our next segue about measuring the impact of training programs.
That's correct, Bob. Absolutely. And, to hit on that success story, talk about that measuring impact when it comes to skill development efforts. We've got one of my favorite success stories here, a company that needs no introduction, and that is, of course, Microsoft. And with Microsoft, they had one of the most interesting challenges for us yet. Basically, they came to us wanting to empirically measure the training impacts of a brand new journey to principal learning community that they were setting up in 2022, that was looking to develop the top 1% of their engineers to see if they were ready for their next step in their career. Should they be considered for supervisory managers? However, they did have one big curveball for us. They wanted it delivered virtually across 14 countries on 3 different continents. But with inbox simulations, it was as easy as a 1-2-step process. Because what we did was we had these learners go through 2 of our ready-to-use experiences that are a part of the leadership development series that Bob and I both alluded to. The first one I went through was business management, that covered, assessed core soft skills. And the second one was people management, that also looked at soft skills, but additionally gave them information on their supervisory competencies as well. And basically, by completing both experiences, Microsoft was able to benchmark where everyone's skills were at via the first simulation at the beginning of the program, and then track the development of the learners all the way to its close by the time they went through people management. And in doing so, they were not only able to see how they could assist learners in a more targeted fashion by knowing the specific skills or competencies that they need to put more focus on, but they were able to use all this cohort level data to essentially refine their program further by understanding where they may have too much emphasis or too little emphasis on certain topics to make it even more successful as we go into its second year here. And then now let's go ahead and take a look and shift gears to the academic side, take a little bit about how Polk State is doing something similar. Bob?
Yeah, yes, they are. So like Microsoft, Polk State College wants to measure the impact of their training and the educational program on their students. So Polk State has a clear mission to ensure that their students have the experiential learning opportunities to develop career readiness skills. And so one challenge that Polk State has was how to measure career readiness of their students. throughout the curriculum. And so what Polk State is doing, and they implemented this last year, is to use the inbox catalog to place inboxes throughout their curriculum, both at the beginning of their program, their academic program in the business school, and throughout the program. And so they'll be able to do pre and post testing on students to see how their skill competencies, their soft skills development, and also some of their technical skills are being improved upon. And one of the interesting things that Polk State's doing is using the entire inbox catalog. So it's not just in a particular course, but they're embedding this across the curriculum. So it's an organic way. It's that students will be able, on multiple touch points, to experience day in the life simulations, but also to assess their competencies throughout their academic program at Polk State. So we're really excited working with them, and a really great group of professors who are engaging and using inboxes to help their students develop skills, and also to be able to measure those results across the curriculum.
Absolutely. And just, Bob, to your point there is one final quote I would like to share that kind of ties both those together. It really puts the emphasis on the importance of measuring that impact. And I just got a quick quote here from Microsoft's program lead and team manager we work with, Jim Chismar, who really said it best, I think, in that it's the ultimate validation of your training efforts to be able to say, here's where we are, where we were, here's where we are now. And he goes on to kind of say that, most training at Microsoft is technical, so you could see that change fairly easily. But with Capsum Inbox, it let them see it even when the results aren't technical in your face, particularly when it came to those supervisory and soft skill competencies. And really, it's at this point where I'd be happy to hand it off to Bob, where we're confident where we can do the same for you and your students. Bob?
All right, thanks again, Matt. So in talking with companies over the last couple of years, a number of questions kept coming up related to the inbox platform and how to engage with Capsum. And so these questions were, do you have something we can use today? We have a problem, we need a solution today. Can we reconfigure or adjust some of the inbox simulations, or can we create our own? Is it a flexible platform? And then certainly, what about cost, and related to particularly for corporations, and also we'll talk a second in business schools. What happens when we increase our usage? Because what we're seeing when inbox simulations are entered into a company or a school, that they're used a lot. And people see a lot of ways that inbox could be used in ways that we hadn't thought of at Capsum, but are meaningful to their organizations. So what we're presenting today is the model that we came up with for corporations, which is our Capsum site license options. And so with the site-wide license option, very simple: one price, unlimited use. If there's one takeaway today, that's it. But there's more to it than that. There are a number of components, because we wanted to make sure that from a programmatic perspective, universities have both the flexibility to use these inboxes wherever they need, much like Polk State is doing, but also to have cost certainty, to have predictability. I was at the university 2 weeks ago, and they're looking to adopt the Capsum platform as well. And in our conversations, like, oh, it can be used here in this department, in this course and such. And then I saw the dean kind of pause for a second, and go, And I said, that's the pause of how much is it going to cost if we use it more? And essentially, and additionally, what will I have to give up in order to use this? What other cuts we're going to make? And so with the inbox platform, you have unlimited use. So you can use it in a way that makes sense for your program, and have that certainty of, budget and forecasting, in terms of costs for the following year. So Matt, and let's look at some of the components that we have with this. So within the site license, the inbox site license, we have our ready to use inboxes. This is the first question, right? Do you have something today? Absolutely. We have over 20 inbox simulations that assess soft skills, but also some technical knowledge on core business topics. You can start assessing career readiness right away. We're also adding to the simulation catalog, as Matt mentioned before, all the time. So this collection's continuously growing. And so there are more options, more alignment, perhaps with curriculums as we add more of these. And as an example of that, we're excited to announce that this upcoming fall, Capstone will be launching our ESG sustainability series, a series of inboxes that will focus on ESG related skill sets that are essential for corporations, organizations that are looking to implement ESG programs. You need to have the skills beyond in order to effectively launch that. So we're really excited to adding that, and our clients who have the site-wide license, that gets added too. And so that's kind of the value that we add to it. But I also mentioned earlier, and Matt highlighted as well, schools also want to have the flexibility, the curricular agility to say, hey, we have our own program, or we have our own unique use case that we want to bring into it. Or also we've seen with our clients, we have a really talented faculty who have all these stories, these scenarios that they want to go through, and how do we incorporate that into our curriculum? And so inboxes are a way to take that knowledge of your practitioners, of your professors, and adding them into simulated experiences. At Polk State, as a matter of fact, I was going through one of the scenarios with one of their professors, and he was a former CEO of a large company. He said, yeah, that's exactly the scenario I deal with as a CEO. So that type of experience can be done with the Capstone site license and our authoring platform, which allows universities, professors to build simulations with the no-code authoring tools, as Matt mentioned. We can also work and provide training and support along the ways to help facilitate that. Or some of our existing inboxes, you can say, hey, I like this, but can we add a little bit more to that? And so we're a completely flexible platform that allows you to grow and change with the changing market conditions. As we started off earlier, and as Matt so articulated so well, things are changing, and having a set in stone platform that can't be flexible, that isn't doesn't adjust and react to what you're all trying to react to in your daily curriculums and your programs is not helpful. And so we built those two components into the site license, the Capstone Inbox site license. And then lastly, we have another option that's outside the site license, but one that I wanted to bring you, a service that we provide at Capstone is, if you don't have time to create a custom inbox, no problem. Our team of IO psychologists, subject matter experts, instructional designers can work with your team and build an inbox for you. So we'd be happy to talk to you about that and kind of scope out what that would mean. But we also, that's one option. We also want to give you the ability in our platform for you to do it yourself. Sometimes it's just great to do it yourself. And so we're able to facilitate and work with our clients in both capacities. And so as we're concluding this part, and we will have time for Q&A and some questions if you have them, but we're really looking forward to explore with you what your needs are for career readiness, right? And how we can help support the initiatives in your business schools to help your students become career ready, both with soft skills, but also perhaps some of the technical skills or the unique qualities that and interests that your program focuses on. We can help build and support those initiatives with our inbox platform. But it all starts with a conversation. So if you want to take your smartphone and grab the QR code, they'll add a form, and we'll be happy to set up a time to talk with you and just explore what's possible both at your course, in your department, and also business school wide. We're happy to have any of those conversations. So please fill that out, and look forward to talking with you soon. So Matt, do we have any follow-up? Do you want to add to that, or should we jump into some questions?
I think that was great. At this point, we'd be happy to take the remaining 10 minutes for any questions from the audience. If you do have any, feel free to click that Q&A button within your Zoom module here. It'll let you submit a question. I do see we have 2 or 3 already that I can address, but feel free to input those, and we can certainly get to those questions. But the first question, Bob, we have that came in midway through, I'm happy to field this one, is how long do inbox simulations take to complete? And can you give me a general idea of how long they take to create? So starting with the first part, how long do inbox sims take to complete? So let's look at our ready to use simulations, for example, like the leadership development series that Bob and I mentioned focuses on soft skills, ethics, time management, and so on. All of these experiences are very much micro-based learning. I would say an average completion time is going to be roughly 30 to 45 minutes or so. We allot an hour's time, but you can change that time if you'd like. But within that average completion time, you're going to see your students interact with roughly 20 to 30 email stimuli across each of the 4 ready-to-use experiences that we hit on there. But as far as how long they take to create, really it's all up to you in terms of the scope of your project. I mean, just to give you some insight into what I've seen on the corporate side of things, I've worked with instructional designers that over the course of a weekend created a 10 to 15 minute immersive simulation that's incredibly detailed. I've seen role preview simulations used for pre-hiring assessments that took only a few hours time to create. So really it's all up to you. But what I would say is that what we provide is a variety of templates, instructional videos, a whole trove of different supporting resources, as well as myself, to help share best practice to really bring your project to life to make it the best that it can be. So really just mainly depends on that scope there. Let's see if we have any other questions. The second question here I'll let you field this one, Bob, is
Sure.
can you tell me a bit more about LMS and can we integrate these with single sign-on?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the in terms of usability, having the tools where you need to use them makes them more accessible and more successful. And so CAPSIM, our inbox simulations can be dropped right into any major LMS for single sign-on. So you can drop it in as an assignment and have your students go right where they need to go to. That makes it a better experience for your students. It also cuts down on the support questions that you may field in your class or at your school. So it simplifies the process, creates a better user experience. And so that's a long answer to say, yes, Matt, it does integrate with LMSs.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, again, feel free to submit any additional questions. Happy to respond here. We do have another one here. Happy to field this one on my side. Can you tell me a little bit more about pre and post test? Absolutely. So basically with pre and post tests, it's very straightforward. I can kind of detail like the most common scenario we see that done on the academic side. Most commonly, we'll see the same version of CAPSIM inbox or maybe 2 different experiences that measure the same skills implemented in a pre and post test within a given course, or even at the bookends of an entire curriculum. But I would say most commonly would be, take for instance, kind of like Microsoft. Maybe you have them go through a simulation on day 1 of your course to really introduce them to what they're going to experience, why the skills and the knowledge they learn in your course are going to be relevant in a real world career. And at the same time, benchmark where your students are at then. And then have them do it as a part of the close of the course as well. That way you can see both the empirical and longitudinal development of skills between that first and second implementation. I mean, we've also seen these used for a variety of ways, just for like assurance of learning as well, just to be able to demonstrate that with some data behind it. So an excellent question there. But
Yeah,
any
Matt.
additional questions? I'm sorry, Bobby, would you like to add to
Oh,
that?
yeah, no, that's good.
Absolutely. Excellent. Any other questions that we could fill at this time? These are all great, by the way.
Yeah, I have one question about looking at one question about curriculum and how to use these in a class. And can inbox simulations be graded? So certainly they can be graded. So being an assessment tool, the primary focus, the main sort of grade we see is usually a pass-fail grade for professors to add it in so that there's accountability for it. But the actual conversations and learning happens when students get their feedback reports, right? Where they see at the beginning, they rate themselves on how well they are at certain skills. And then they go through the simulation then measures them against the percentile of tens of thousands of others who've gone through that simulation. And sometimes there's a moment of cognitive dissonance when between what they thought they were good at and what actually what the simulation has that capability. And one thing, so that can be graded and such, but we see most use cases are pass fail, and then the formative assessment, the formative assessment part takes a primary role. But we also see there's an individual development plan that students can do as a result of their score on the inbox, and that can be graded, right? How are you going to address these skill gaps? What steps are you going to take? what resources you're going to use. And that is frequently where we do see a grade, but not necessarily a grade on, whether they were good at any particular competency, but how they're addressing those competency gaps is where we see grading being applied occasionally by professors as they see fit.
Excellent, excellent. Bob, we do have one other question that just came in. Is the site license monetized on a per student / user basis, meaning a single student in several courses, for example, is counted once or multiple times?
So that's a great question. So it's done on a basically your student population in your school would be the population. That student can use it multiple times, right? So it's not one student who goes through 8 inboxes, it counts as 8 users. That's one user. So that's how we do the population. What's the the unique login, that your unique person that's coming into the simulation, is how we measure that. So basically the FTE population, or whatever benchmark you're using, we'd be happy to work with you to establish what that is. But then it's unlimited use after that.
Excellent.
And I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely. And then a final call for any questions, anything that Bob and I can speak to at this time. Feel free to let us know. I'll give you a moment there. Okay, I think we're all good, Bob. I'm gonna close this out.
All right. Well, yeah. Well, thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. And again, if you need to get in touch with us, please use the QR code. We'll get right back to you. And we look forward to helping you help your students gain the career readiness skills that they need to be successful, both upon graduation, but also throughout their careers. And again, thank you so much, Matt. Thank you for all of your insights, and look forward to seeing you in the next webinar.
Excellent.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Take it easy.